Welcome is how 100 years ago many of you may have been greeted on your arrival here in downtown Millheim, so I repeat, welcome and a Dankeschön on your traveling here to join the local community and the members of the Millheim Fire Company to join us on this evening's parade and the carnival that's going to follow. As many of you may have heard or may have not have heard, this is the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Millheim Fire Company. And this year we are expanding on our annual carnival to include some special activities to commemorate the 100 years of the citizen volunteers that the both past and present who put forth in serving the local area in defense of the lives and the property of the area. While the late 1800s saw the first formation of a fire company, it was not until the great conflagration of 1909 that the citizenry really felt that there was a need to organize a self-defense force, and they then partitioned the courts of Center County for the official recognition of their status as a fire company so they could receive their due rights of the fire company that were available to them at the time. The 1940s saw a big expansion in the fire company. The long rectangular building, which we now call our home, was built. That was completed between 1948 and 49, and according to the records that I looked up, it was dedicated on the 3rd of September 1949, so about 50 years ago is when the, excuse me, was that 50? That was 60 years ago is when the building was actually completed. Before that, I don't actually know where the fire company was housed, but you're going to be seeing some of the equipment that was in the building. You're going to see some of the other equipment that has since left the building, but it's actually returned to town at our surprise this evening. We didn't know it was coming, but it did show up. I'm going to go off on a tangent now and explain that the vehicles that served the community not only were fire trucks, but also ambulances in the early days. Now, the actual early ambulances weren't even belonging to the fire company. They actually belonged to the local undertaker. So the station wagons of the undertaker were actually used not only for the undertaker business, but also to transport patients to the hospital, if you're not aware of that. And our records actually show that the fire company one time was paying their annual dues to Neff Funeral Home here in the Millheim for ambulance service if we should ever need it. Now in the 1950s, because of growing population growth, there became a need for a dedicated ambulance instead of the undertaker's vehicle. And that's when the fire company actually undertook serving the community with an ambulance service. An ambulance was purchased. Of course, it was the old Cadillac-style station wagon. That was the first ambulance that they had in town, at least belonging to the fire company. And because of that, they ran out of space in the original building. They actually built a concrete block addition on the back of the existing building. And if you go over to the carnival grounds and you ask for a hamburger, that's what used to be the ambulance garage. Now, not only did the Millheim Fire Company serve this local area here in Millheim, Penn Township, and Haines Township, but for some time it also served the Brush Valley area until the formation of their own fire company, as well as the ambulance service also used to serve Brush Valley. Now, we started out with some hose carts. You're going to see those coming through the parade. Then we bought I think it's a 1932 or 1934 Ward de France. My mind slips me right now exactly what year that vehicle is. I can look it up on the insurance card, but until the 1950s, that was our only piece of apparatus fighting fires. Now, in 1950s, we supplemented that with a American La France engine, and that engine was a little bit bigger. And it also featured a semi-enclosed area which allowed 2 additional firefighters in addition to the driver and the first officer to ride behind the driver and the passenger. Of course, with that larger tailboard on the back of the Ward American La France. Also, I can remember as a child getting to ride on the tailboard and going to a few fires as well. In the 1950s, we also added our first tank truck. And that was a GMC tank truck, and I think that was about a 1951, if my mind serves me correctly. Now, then in the 1970s saw the next major large expansion of the fire company when we retired our 1932 Ward de France, and we purchased a brand new 1972 Hahn pumper, and then we needed additional space to house that thing in, and that was our first addition on the north side of our the big building. And I'll also add that during the 1970s also saw a shift in the ambulance service out of the fire service to a dedicated ambulance service, and which at that time became known as Millheim Ambulance, and then by consolidation with other local ambulance companies, eventually becoming the East Penns Valley and East Center Ambulance, and the involvement today to Penns Valley EMS. This also saw a change from station wagons at that time as the ambulance to the van-based vehicles, which were more prevalent than you'll see now. And that allowed, of course, more attendants to ride in the back of the ambulance and help people out. The fire company continues to house one of the ambulances of the Penns Valley EMS in our building, and it's a satellite garage to them. Penns Valley EMS, if you're not aware, dedicated a new building 3 years ago up in Drake Township and shifted their headquarters there, but they still serve this local area with the ambulance that is parked here in our fire company. Also in the 1970s, we saw a Ford van added to the equipment list, an equipment truck as we called it, hauled the accumulated equipment that wasn't able to be hauled in a pumper, such as rakes, backpack style forest firefighting equipment, water tanks, rakes, things like that. Also generator, lights, and fans, which wouldn't fit in them bigger trucks. The Ford van was eventually replaced by a Dodge truck, which was also added with rescue tools, such as what everybody has probably heard of in the past, the Jaws of Life, and those became one of the major pieces of equipment that has evolved to save many lives today. We also added a second tanker truck in the 1970s, and then dedicated a new rescue vehicle was a Dodge Power Wagon. After the first rescue truck expired, we added the Dodge Power Wagon. The 1980s saw a second expansion of the fire company. Now, we had built the 4-bay garage in the early 70s, but after the American Legion building, which originally stood beside the northern section of the fire company, had a fire one very early in the morning, the Legion decided they were going to rebuild out in the west end of town. The fire company had the opportunity to purchase that adjacent tract, and subsequently we built the second 4-bay garage, and that's the steel frame building that you see out there. It's actually wood frame but covered in steel now. So that's the 3 major buildings we have: the original long rectangular brick building, then the brick attachment on the 72 area, and then in the 80s the steel building to the north of that. During the 1980s, the original GMC tank truck became unserviceable. We got rid of that, and 2 more vehicles were purchased: an international tank truck, which we still possess and drive to the scene. You'll see that going through the parade tonight, and that replaced a wrecked Ford tank truck. We've only ever done that one time. I don't ever have to want to do that again. And we also purchased a GMC rescue truck, and we then got rid of it was the Chevy van, I believe it was. And then recently we retired the 1972 Hahn and replaced that with a brand new KME, which you'll see going through the parade. Now the Hahn we did sell, and the American LaFrance likewise we did sell, and we replaced that with a used E1 pumper. So that's pretty well, I'll say, a short history. It took, 5 minutes or so to get through that, but that's how the fire company has evolved from 1909 until the present day. We'd like to thank everyone for coming out. We're getting the parade underway.